Okay, the second half of this lesson is bringing in the idea of organisation charts. For the exam, you have to be able to look at an organisation chart and be able to describe what's going on. So we're going to focus mainly this 45 minutes on the basics, and then we'll look at analysing them next lesson. So, definition then. A diagram which shows how the workers are organised in a business and who is in charge of whom. It's that simple, really. It's just an illustration of how everyone's related in the business. And if you think of it like a family tree, it's going to put people who work together with a boss over them. Okay? Now, this is an example of an organisation chart. The closer you are to the top, the more power you have, and also it's probably talking about one person, where the further to the bottom you are, you might be grouped together in a team, as we can see here. So the board of directors and the managing director at the top, they run the business, the managing director taking ultimate responsibility. We've then got the functional directors here, the finance, operations, human resources and marketing director on the third layer. After that, there are certain directors, not the finance director, but certainly the other three, who have people working for them. So the operations director's got a stock manager and a distribution manager. The HR director's got a payroll manager who looks after everyone's pay. And the marketing director has a sales manager. Now, the key thing about these people, which hopefully you're picking up from this diagram, is that everyone on the same level has a similar job. So all of the directors are on the same level. All of the managers are on the same level. And that's important in the diagram because everyone on that same layer of the diagram should have a similar position. And so, again, we can go one step further with the sales manager. They've got 3 sales teams, the London, Manchester and Bristol sales team. And again, they're all on the same level. And what you would expect is that people on the same level are paid similar amounts of money because they are doing a similar job. Now, that's a very crude explanation of that organisation chart. There is a lot more technical terminology that you need to be able to use, and what I want you to do in today's lesson is to get that terminology, and as I said, next lesson we'll look about using it in more detail. So that terminology: hierarchy, layers, authority, accountability, chain of command, line manager, subordinates, span of control. Okay, they all describe different things on that diagram, and you've got to be able to use those terms to describe a diagram in an exam. And what you normally get is 1 mark per term used and 1 mark for actually applying it. So, for example, if you were to say that the Bristol sales team was subordinate to the sales manager, then you would get 1 mark for using subordinates and 1 mark for showing it on the diagram by saying that the sales team were under the others. So the terminology is important, and one of the tasks I want you to do shortly is to get definitions for all of these. Look at the end of the chapter in the textbook where they list all the definitions. Now, what would be the benefit of having this diagram? Well, basically, they show who is responsible for each function. So we can see the managing director is responsible for those functional directors. We can see the HR director is responsible for payroll. The sales come under the marketing director, and so on. We can see who does what. It also shows what the person is accountable for because there's a job title attached to it. So the payroll manager is responsible for payroll within the human resources department. It shows which work is delegated to specialists. Okay, so if there is a specialist, that will be shown on there, and we can see who has ultimate responsibility for that. It shows who is responsible for whom, so that's important when looking at teams, managers, workers, and so on. And it also shows the lines of communication. Now, this is going to be even more important because we have to do a lesson on communication as well, but it shows how you can communicate through the organisation to get messages to different people. And through all the lines, it shows how departments are linked to each other. We know that people are on the same levels and the same layers, but it also shows how they link to each other, especially when it starts to get more and more complicated with more and more people on each layer. Okay, that's basically all I'm worried about today. Get those definitions written down and make sure that you're happy with the basics of that. Okay, and we'll look at analysing those organisation structures in next lesson in more detail.